All right, it is 6 o'clock now. So I'll go ahead and get started. So there was no new material to cover for class this week. Really, the only thing that you have this week is your final project, which is due Tuesday night, tomorrow night, by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That there is no exception to any kind of late turn-in for this. The reason being is that I have a very limited amount of time to ensure all grades are computed and all grades are submitted to the university. Therefore, I just can't take anything late after 11:59 Tuesday night, Eastern Standard Time. Okay, so let's talk about the final project a little bit. So what I'll do is I will program out a few things, like kind of like a scenario that's somewhat similar to what your final project is. And you should be able to take ideas from the examples I give you and apply those directly to the final project. So let's imagine we have this scenario. Let's say we have a group of people and we want to do a few things with them. First, we want to ask them what year they were born. Okay, we'll get user input to tell us what year the person was born. Then we're going to use Python to compute what their age is. And then we're going to use Python to compute if they're old or if they're young. And we're just going to arbitrarily, select the cutoff ages for young or old. But we'll just kind of go through these few steps right here, and it kind of applies to what you have to do for your final project. So let's start off with just imagine one single person. Let's ask them what year they were born. Let's compute their age, and let's tell them if they're old or young. So let's get as input the year they were born. So say the year is equal to the int of the input, enter the year you were born, right? That's double quotes. I like using single quotes better. Right. So now the year will be whatever they typed in for the year they were born, right? Well, let's compute their age. So how would we compute their age? It's, the current year minus the year they were born, right? That should be their current age. Yeah, I know there's a little bit of wiggle room in there depending on the month, the exact month and the exact day. But in general, right, to keep it simple, this is how we would compute the age is the current year, 2021, minus the year that they typed in that they were born. That's their age. So let's tell them that's how old they are. Let's print, you are, was it, I think I can do it like this, age, I think this works for Python, age, years old. All right, let's just save it and run it. And if they were born in 1990, it says you are 31 years old, right? So we have successfully computed how old they are, and we told them. So now let's tell them, are you young or are you old? Well, we can do that with an if statement. So if the age is less than, let's say if they're less than 40, then we're going to say print, you are old. Else, print, you are young, right? So we'll have them input the year, we'll compute their age, and then if they are less than 40 years old, oops, I'm sorry, I got this kind of backwards, don't I? If they are less than 40, they are young. Else means they're 40 or greater, right? You are old. All right, so 40 is kind of that cutoff age, and I just made that up on my own. Right, so if they're born in 1991, they are 30 years old and they are young. If they were born in 1980, they are 41 years old and they are old. And then let's test the edge case. They were born in 1981. They're 40 years old and they're old. And if they're 1982, they're 39 years old and they're young. So that was actually kind of run through a test case, right? So we know this works so far. Okay. For one individual person, this will get the year, compute their age, and then determine if they're young or old. This is kind of similar to, for one person, getting their height and weight. That's getting 2 inputs. Here I'm only getting 1. But for your homework, you have to get their height and their weight. You have to compute their body mass index. And then if that body mass index is within certain ranges, either they're underweight, overweight, or the correct weight or something like that, right? So that's kind of the 3 steps that I have right here. Just, with this, we're just dealing with age. So this is for one person. What if we have a list of people? Let's just call it people. Let's make it a list. And one more. Sue. So have a list of 4 people, right? Well, how can we do this for each of those people? Well, we can do a loop over this list of people. And this is nothing new. This is stuff we've already done in the class. So let's say for person, and people, let's do all this stuff, right? And instead of saying enter the year you were born, let's say enter the year person was born. That kind of personalizes a little bit. So the prompt will say enter the year person was born. So the first time in the loop, person is Dan, so it'll say enter the year Dan was born. The next time in the loop, enter the year Ben was born. Then it'll be enter the year Jill was born, and enter the year Sue was born. And so even here in the output, instead of saying you are this year's old, now it's going to be person. Person is that many years old. And instead you are young, is person is young, or person is old. So now we can do the same stuff just over a list of people. Let's run it. Enter the year Dan was born. Let's say 1970. Dan is 51 years old. Dan is old. Ben was 1980. Ben is 41 years old. Ben is old. Jill, 1990. Jill is 31 years old. Jill is young. Enter the year Sue was born. Say 2000. Sue is 21. Sue is young. So now we've been able to do a loop over all of these people and do the same exact work just on one individual person at a time. Okay. So let's abstract this out a little bit. So, here we do a computation for the age, right? In your assignment, it specifically tells you need to write a couple of functions to do some of the work, to do some of the math. Well, let's write a function to compute their age for our example. I'll close that. So let's write a function called compute age. Okay, hold on one second. Sorry, it's just DEF. There we go. I knew something was a little bit off. So we're going to define a function to compute the age. What do we need to know to compute the age? Well, we need to know the current year, and we need to know the birth year, right? We need those two pieces of information to compute an age, right? And the age is just the current year minus the birth year, right? And then we can return the age. So now I have made my own function that computes an age, and we have to give it the current year and the birth year. So instead of doing the math here directly, we can now see age is equal to our function, compute the age. We need to give it the current year, so we can put 2021 as the current year, and we need to give it the birth year. And the birth year is right here, right? It's what they input as the year they were born. Okay. Let's write another function to determine if they're old or young. Define old or young. What do we need to know to determine if they're old or young? We need to know their age, right? Okay, so let's give it the age. So for this, we could just say if the age is less than 40, then we're going to return that they're young. Else, we're going to return that they're old. Okay, it's really the same, almost the same thing we're doing here, except we're just going to return from this, and instead of returning an integer. For example, here when we compute the age, we're returning an integer. When we're determining if they're old or young, we're actually returning a string. We're saying return the string young, return the string old. So here, old or young, can't use the same thing. Can't think of a good variable name right now. Let's just call it AAA. But it'll be old or young. What do we got to give it? We got to give it the age, and we computed the age here. So there's the age. So now here we can just print out this person is AAA. And why can I do that? Because AAA is equal to whatever this function returns. And we've already said that this function returns young or it returns old. So let's save it and let's run this. And you see, we're going to get the same thing. In the year Dan was born, 1970. You see it still says Dan's 51. Dan is old. I guess I forgot to put let's fix that. Let's put a space in there. Yeah, put a space right there. Now, Dan 1970, Dan is 51, Dan is old. 1980, so on and so forth. As you can see, we're really doing the same work, except we've taken some of this and moved it off to be computed in a function. Okay, and that's part of the requirement for your assignment, is it specifically tells you to put some functions in there to accomplish certain things. Okay, so now let's say we want to remember how old, the age of people. And we remember things with variables, right? So let's make a new list called ages, right? So let's take out the rest of the stuff we don't want to look at right now. So here, we ask for the year, we compute the age, and let's remember how old people are, and we can do that with ages dot was it push? No, append. Yeah, append this age. Let's do that, and then at the end of the loop, let's print out what ages is. Actually, we'll print out the people and the ages. And let's see what happens when we do that. There it is. Dan was born in 1970, Ben 1980, Jill 1990, Sue 2000. As you can see here, here's where we get this print people and print ages. So now you can see we have all these people, Dan, Ben, Jill, and Sue, and this is how old each of them are. Because every time we computed an age for the person, we added it to this ages list. Notice the list starts out to be empty. There's nothing in there. But each time we ask how old somebody is, we compute the ages and then we append it to that ages list. So now here, after the loop, we have the list of people and the list of how the age each of them is, right? How would we compute who is the oldest person? Or actually, first, let's get the oldest age. Do you remember the built-in function max? Let's get the oldest is the max of the ages. The youngest minus the max is the min of the ages. And let's just print that. Print oldest, print youngest. That's right. Save it and run it. Let's just make up years now. Whatever. Let me use the ones I was using before. 1970, 1980, 1990, and 2000. And you see the oldest is 51 and the youngest is 21, which makes sense because here where we computed the ages earlier, the oldest is 51 and the youngest is 21. So that can be used to determine what is the oldest and youngest age. But now let's, for the grand finale here, and then we'll start talking about questions, because really I've shown you about everything you need to know for the final. Let's count how many people are old and how many people are young. Okay, that is kind of equivalent to your assignment asking you to count how many are underweight, how many are overweight, and how many are just right, I guess. So we have this array of ages, right? We have this array that says how old everyone is. Well, let's count. Let's make a counter. A count of how many old there are starts out to be 0. And a count of how many young there are starts out to be 0. Let's loop over all the ages. And then, so what do we need to do now? Well, first of all, let me print out age so you can see what age is. Like I said, this isn't the first time we've done loops. So you should see that age is this array just accessing one number at a time, right? So if we run it, 1970, 1980, 1990, and 2000, you see this right here, the 51, 41, 31, 21 is where we're running this loop right here. We're printing out those individual age, right? Okay, so we have the age. How do we tell if it's old or young? Well, we have a function for that. We have a function called old or young, right? So we can do something like this. You know, let's just call it AAA, the old or young. Got to give the age. Now, just for slowly progressing along, let's print that out. Print out the age, and then we'll print out if they're old or young. Let's run that. 70, 1980, 1990, 2000. Oops, I just, oh yeah. Age is an integer, but to print it, we need it to be a string. When we add it, stuff like that, it needs to be a string. 1970, 1980, 1990, 2000. There you go. So you can see the work we're doing right here. We have the age and we have AAA. AAA is this old, young, right? So now that we have the string old or the string young, let's count how many times those appear. If AAA equals old, then the count old goes up by 1 else if AAA equals young, then the count of young goes up by 1. If it's not young or old, something went terribly wrong. Go fix your code. If it gets to that point. If it gets to this point, AAA is just the return value from old or young. We've already looked and saw that old or young only returns young or old. It doesn't return anything else. So if AAA is equal to whatever that's returning, we're saying, is it old? Else if, is it young? If it's anything else, something's went wrong with your code or your computer, go get help. Okay. So now after this loop, what do we have? We have a counter that says how many people are old and how many people are young. Because every time it was old, we increased that counter by 1. Every time it was young, we increased that counter by 1. So let's print out num young is, was it the count young, and the num old is the count old. So let's run this. Dan was born in 1970, 1980, 1990, 2000. There are 2 young and 2 old in there. And you can see if we change it up a little bit, let's say we make everybody born since 2000, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003. There's 4 young and 0 old. If we make them really old, it says we have no young and 4 old. If remember, I think 1981 was the cutoff year. So if we do 1980, 1991, oh, I didn't mean to do 91. 1980, 1981, 1982, 1983 is 2 and 2. If we do 1979, 1980, 1981, 1982, should be like 3 and 1. And there you go. So that's how we've managed to count up how many people are old and how many people are young. And this will kind of correspond to how you need to do it to count up, how many people are underweight, how many people are overweight, and how many people are in the sweet spot in the middle. And this is kind of a skeletal outline of what your final should probably kind of resemble. Of course, you need to significantly modify this to actually do, heights and weights and body fat percentage and, which of those 3 categories they fall into. Okay. Again, before I pass it out to questions, you are free to resubmit any previous assignment up until Tuesday night. This assignment is due Tuesday night. Both of those are at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I can't take anything after that time. All right, so any questions you may have, go ahead.
Professor, I guess with this, with the 2 inputs, it shouldn't change too much, correct? Because I guess that's my only concern right now, but I wouldn't know until I start, going through it. And I'm kind of like, oh my goodness, it's not working out because all of a sudden I got 2 inputs.
No, it's really not much different at all. I mean, obviously in this one, I'm using 1 input, but if you had 2 inputs, you could put another input. I didn't spell that right, but okay. Int input, enter something else, and there you go. Now it'll ask the user for 2 inputs. And then, in your function, you're supposed to get the height and the weight, and then you're supposed to call a function to calculate their BMI. So right here, I'm calling a function to calculate their age. I'm giving it, the current year and the year that they typed in, right? Maybe you have a function called calculate BMI. And what is the information you need to calculate the BMI? You need their height and their weight. So you would give to that function the height and the weight. So you would still have two variables to give to it. So it's really not much different than this general outline dealing with the two input problem.
All right, Professor, that answers my question. And also, I'm glad that you went over the whole string, I guess, where you have to type in string for it to take it from the list, because that was another issue I was having. I was like, this is not working out. It's telling me it doesn't want to output, what I wanted to print because it was an integer or something.
Oh yeah, you mean where you're doing like something here. Man, I can't even type right now.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you want to do like plus the string of the age or
yeah.
something. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It's because what you're doing inside of here, it does this math first before it tries to print it. It tries to do the plus sign first. So if you have this right here, and imagine age is an integer, right? You're trying to add together a string and an integer. And really that doesn't make sense to add a string and a number together.
Exactly.
So you do this right here. And so Python will convert this integer into a string. And then it makes sense that you can add two strings together because it just concatenates them.
Okay, yes, exactly. That's what my error said. It said it did have that verbiage concatenate.
Okay.
All right, Professor. Well, that was it. If I have anything else, like I said, it's not it. I usually don't come up with much of anything until I start doing my code.
Okay. Just if you have any run into any problems or have any issues, the earlier you can email me, the better.
Exactly.
I mean, it's due tomorrow night, but if you email me at 11 p.m. tomorrow night, I'm probably not going to see it in time. So the earlier the better.
Sounds good. Yes, definitely. I'll get it in early. All right. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.